All right, guys, so if you've clicked on this video, then you really want to know how to prune your roses. Now, many of us get gifted these, and we've got to keep the roses looking amazing. If you follow the steps that I'm about to give you, you will probably get a much better flowering rose. And that is the main reason why we prune. We prune to rejuvenate. And in this case, today, the example that we're showing you, number one, is a bush rose. It's a shrub rose. It's the most popular rose in the world, and it's called the iceberg rose. Iceberg rose will flower and produce flower buds from old wood. Now, what do we mean by old wood? So here's a clear example. You can see this is the older wood. And how do we know it's older? Well, the prickles or the thorns as we know them are dark gray. Here, greener stem, lighter prickles. You can see they're not gray. They're a lighter color. So that's how we know the difference between old wood and new wood. When to prune. These are the guidelines. If you live in a more subtropical area, July is the month to prune. The more colder your climate, you would prune in any time from August moving forward. Remember that once you have pruned your plant, you are giving it the direct signal that it's time for you to shoot. Now, if you get heavy frost anytime after you've pruned and your new growth has started, remember that growth might frost. So, delayed pruning in the colder areas is definitely a must. Next step is first pruning. Now, your biggest friend is going to be a stick, this guy, a dowel, anything, as long as it is rigid. Now, this is a 90 centimeter dowel, and all we're going to do now is measure out the following. 10 centimeters, you're then going to mark out 50, okay? You're going to mark 70, and then 90, which is obviously here at the top. Now, these represent your different methods or severity of pruning. If this plant was much bigger, my first set of pruning, my first height that I would prune to would be 90. So in other words, everything that is in line with this 90, you remove. And to make life simpler for you and just to follow along with what we're doing, I'm just going to do that. And you literally prune anywhere, guys. You just prune. And the reason why we do this is number one, to simplify life and to make this whole process a whole lot easier for you. And the second thing is that all of a sudden we are now able to really look into the rose, because that is ultimately what we want to do. So if we look at this rose as a whole, and you've got a big guy, really big, you would want to, at your final spot, probably only go to a moderate. All right? So this is gentle, this height that we've got. And because this rose is in a pot, look at your proportions. It really isn't going to work. So in this case, we are going to need to go severe, which is down to our 50 centimeter mark. So next level, remember, this was gentle, this is moderate, that's severe. So we're going to go up to there, and all we do is, same thing, cut everything off at that level. Already, life looks a whole lot better and a whole lot simpler because we've taken all the noise away. The next step that you're going to be doing is, once you have removed that, is you are then going to start removing all thin, twiggy, spindly growth. All right? Ideally, we want to end up with 1, 2, 3, or 4 major stems. Thin, spindly, take it away. Take it away. Folks, I'm often asked about this, which you can see is dieback. And this is a natural process that happens. And a lot of people used to get very stressed about it. And right now, in the rose world, it's considered a natural process. Now, I think it is really natural because we've scarred the plant. But what does happen, and you would have noticed that, remember we pruned this away here. So the plant says, don't worry, I'm a little bit hurt. So I'm going to send out a new growth point from just below. Right, folks, so we are down to this main stem and this main stem here. And because this is a bush floribunda rose, we can end up with 2 stems. When you are talking about a typical cut flower rose, which is the long, tall, like the red rose that you give, you ideally want to end up with 1, 3, maximum 4 of your main stems. But being a bush shrub rose, we can end up with 2. Now remember, because this is a pot, and we said right in the beginning we want to keep the proportions, and we had a lot of bare stem, you would once again apply the same rule. And now we're going to go in for the severe pruning, and this is normally where you pass out. But please do not, because the plant will recover. So severe pruning, I'm going to go in, right? Are you with me? And we are just going to cut, and it's a nice squeeze. All right, over here, we're going to go in, a nice squeeze, and there we go. And once again, over here, a nice squeeze, and there it is. Let's talk a bit about the angle of the cut. So the new rule is very simple. It's a 90-degree cut. A 90-degree straight across, guys, you can see it here, nice and simple. Why? If you make an angled cut, the reasoning is that an angled cut would create more surface area or a bigger wound. A flat cut allows the plant to recover much quicker. Final step is really simple. Look at the base. Is there any diseased wood? This is dried out here. Yep, so let's get rid of that. Nice and easy. After pruning, this is the best time when one can dig around the roses, and if you want to do any kind of feeding, and it would be encouraged, of course, because we're wanting to get a lot of growth. So a good feeding with your preferred fertilizer, a good mulching, and then of course a really good watering. Right, the next rose that I'm going to show you is what we call the typical HT or hybrid tea. And the hybrid tea rose is that rose that we all want to get given, which is the single-stemmed, beautiful, beautiful rose. In terms of how we prune it, the first few steps are exactly the same as the previous plant that we showed you. We take it right to the point where we decide the severity that we are going to prune. And in this case, I'm going to be doing a severe pruning. And the more severe you prune the plant, you end up with a plant that is going to produce vigorous, longer, clearer, beautiful single stems, which we want for the vase. When you get to this point and you've got your 50 centimeter, which is what I want ideally, and this is severe pruning. Now we need to apply similar principles, just with a slightly different twist. So remember, in the first rose, we said where there are branches that are too close together, because ideally you want to be able to fit a secateurs between them. Why? If you fit a secateurs between them, there's enough growth, enough space for flowers and shoots to develop. Ideally, we want to be able to look down into the rose to identify the stems that we want to leave and the ones we want to remove. Now that we are able to look into the rose, remember I said earlier, you want to be left with 1, 3, maximum 4 of your new stems. So it's not the old wood. We want to remove the old wood at this point, and we want to select the younger green wood for what we want to grow and flourish for the next season. And that is the important part. So if we had a look at this, here is a lovely green young stem. Next to it, coming from this, is also an old branch, an old stem next to the newish. So I would probably sacrifice this and leave that as the new stem for the next season. This one over here, beautiful, still doing its thing, looking good, all right? However, this would need to be removed. Here, very, very old. This is old wood. We are definitely going to be removing that, and then we will be left with 1, 2, 3, 4. So, from that big down to this, take a deep breath. It's okay. We are down to the 4 remaining strong young stems, which are going to serve as the life for the next generation. And then next year, Depending on how well your roses have done, you would then decide if you're going to do a severe or a moderate pruning. Remember, roses are greedy feeders, so feed them well, check out the other clips, and remember our final last bits is to feed, mulch, and water. The rest is really up to this beautiful rose. Folks, remember everything that I've used is available at your local builders, either in-store or online. Check out the blog for more inspiring gardening tips, hints, and of course, DIYs. Get to Builders and get it done.